your family can make or break you, because it is the one that programs 99% of what you actually believe and of what you actually find familiar. This is why you always ask yourself, why do I keep attracting the same people? Why do I keep attracting the same toxic people? It's like the same person but a different face. And at some point you have to stop blaming externals. You have to stop being like, why do I keep attracting these people? Exactly. Why do you keep attracting these people? You have to forgive yourself for making these poor decisions. Hello guys, and welcome back to Woman Enough. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is episode 2 and I am your host Zarila, and today's episode is titled Accepting That You Have a Hand in Your Own Suffering. This is a space where girlies get to learn, grow and become the best version of themselves. Let's jump right into today's topic, accepting that you have a hand in your own suffering. So I want you to approach this episode with an open mind. And this is not about blame. It's about ownership. Okay. The thing is, when you choose to blame someone or blame things, what do? You shift the focus from yourself to the other person or to those circumstances. And this means that you're focusing more on what was done rather than what you did or what can be done next. And that is what owning your mistakes and owning your part in your own suffering does for you. It allows you to actually stop focusing on what was done and start focusing on what can be done next. Okay? So you actually do not have any control in blame because, as I said, you're removing the focus and you're removing the responsibility from yourself and placing it upon other people or other circumstances, which means that you lose your grip and control on the situation. Point number 2, familiar pain can feel like comfort. And I want to make this point land home by referencing to people who grew up in abusive homes. I remember I was telling my friend the other day that if you grow up in an abusive home, like whether your dad beats up your mom or your mom beats up your dad, you are more likely to end up in an abusive relationship yourself. Okay? So we could have there's a lot to talk about when we involve that kind of situation. But for now, I want us to focus on what you, as the subject of this situation, can do to help yourself in such a situation. So it is a fact that if you grow up in an abusive home, there are more chances that you're going to end up in an abusive relationship yourself. Either you're a woman or a man, because these patterns, they feel familiar, okay? And the thing is, family is something that wires you, and it wires you differently. Because you see, for family, you learn to love unconditionally, okay? You love to tolerate people, even if you don't want to, because at the end of the day, they are family, okay? And your family can make or break you, because it is the one that programs 99% of what you actually believe and of what you actually find familiar. Remember in episode 1, we said that your brain likes familiarity, okay? And your brain it loads new things, okay? Your brain will rather stay. No matter, you always ask yourself, why would people still stay in an abusive relationship? Because your brain would rather stay there and feel the pain rather than think of new possibilities or go to some new place, because it is unfamiliar. And our brains don't like that. So it will rather ikae hapo penye ni uchungu yenye imezoea. Okay? It's the pain that it knows. It will rather that than go to somewhere new where there is probably better. Okay? So this is where you come in. Okay? When you know that you have a hand in your own suffering, because you cannot blame your family forever. At some point in Africa, and you're like, now I am an adult, I have to take responsibility. You can't blame your dad for beating up your mom all your life. At some point, you have to be like, I have to choose different because you're an adult who has a choice. Okay. Number 3, avoiding responsibility delays growth. Okay? And that's what I just explained, Apoju. When you take responsibility, when you sit yourself and ask yourself, what am I really tolerating here? What am I accepting? What is it that I'm letting slide? When you do that, you allow yourself space to grow and to focus on different possibilities and new possibilities. Because it is very easy to say, this is happening to me, but it is very difficult to ask yourself, what am I choosing here? But real life or living actually starts when you ask this difficult question. What am I choosing in this situation? It is not when you avoid it, and it's not when you feel like cold about it. No, it's when you face yourself and you face this question head on. Then this takes me to point number 4. Patterns don't repeat by accident. So I believe that we are here on this earth, on this beautiful earth, 1, to experience, and 2, to learn. Okay? So the universe, or whatever it is that you believe in, will keep placing something in your path or in your way so many times until you actually learn from it, until you actually get what exactly it is that you're supposed to get from that situation. This is why you always ask yourself, why do I keep attracting the same people? Why do I keep attracting the same toxic people? It's like the same person, but a different face. And at some point, you have to stop blaming externals. You have to stop being like, why do I keep attracting these people? Exactly. Why do you keep attracting these people? What is it that is within you that you need either to change or you need to learn so that you can stop attracting these people that you don't feel like you actually want to be around, right? So at some point, you have to acknowledge your participation in everything, okay? You have to acknowledge that I am actively a creator of my own reality. And so if a situation is hurting you constantly, it's not always external. 99% of the time is because you're choosing to accept. Because nilikuwa naambia mtu like, mbona ukubali? Because me, I am usually so pissed off when I hear that somebody's getting beat up by a husband, like, or a boyfriend. Because to be honest, like, you can choose to leave. Honestly, like, you can just leave. But I know it's not easy because there's a lot of other issues that come along with such bonds and such relationships. But bottom line is, regardless of all those issues, what are you choosing? You are choosing to accept mtu anakuja na kutumia kama punching bag. You're choosing to accept that somebody who cannot control their own emotions will then take them out on you. Why are you accepting that? Like, you see, you have to ask yourself, mbona nakubali? Why do I deem myself so worthless to the point that I can allow somebody to come out of nowhere and just beat me up? Like, why? You see? So then this takes me to my next point, which is responsibility requires compassion and not punishment. Okay. We have all made very insane decisions in our lives. We have all found ourselves in situations where we're like, how did I end up here? We have all found ourselves in situations where you really did not want to be there and you really did not even see yourself there, but you are in that situation, right? And most of the time, it's not that you're not responsible enough. It's not that you don't question yourself enough. Most of the time, it's just because you're operating from a point of not knowing. You see, you cannot blame a 14-year-old you for the decisions that she made, because at the end of the day, she was operating with only what she had, only what she knew. So it all starts with compassion. You have to sit down, hug that 14-year-old self that hug that 16-year-old self who did something so outrageous. Forgive yourself for these things. You have to forgive yourself for making these poor decisions, because at the end of the day, hiyo ndo kitu ulikuwa unajua at 14-year-old. That is all the information you are operating with. So if you made that decision 10, right now, probably you could have made a better decision. But why? Because you have different knowledge and you have new resources that you didn't have then. So it's not about punishing yourself or beating yourself up. It's about accepting and then holding yourself with compassion and telling yourself, yes, I understand. I made this decision here, but it's only because that is all I knew then. But now that I know better, I can choose better. Because remember, Carl Jung said, if you do not make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will always call it fate. So unaweza ishi kusema this is fate. It's not fate. It's you who is not making the unconscious conscious. It's you who is not digging deep in your mind and seeing the things. And for example, things like that, like forgiving yourself for making decisions that you're not exactly proud of. Forgive yourself first. And then when you do, it's easy to accept that, hey, I made a mistake, but at least I can't make that mistake again because at least I know better now, right? Then last but not least, responsibility creates freedom, right? So when you take responsibility, it doesn't mean that you're being harsh on yourself. It doesn't mean that you're being too uptight. It only means that you are starting to reclaim your freedom back. Because once the role is acknowledged, the outcomes can always change. And that's the thing. You know that you're the driver, you're the one with the steering wheel. So you can always shift the direction, okay? And that is when actually suffering begins to lose its hold on you. So on today's illusion segment, we have the Rubens vase. So this is the vase. It's more like when you look at it, you can either see two faces looking at each other, or you can see a vase, okay? And the thing is, your brain usually chooses what to focus on depending on what is the background, okay? So when you experience something in life, for example, loss or grief or growth, or okay, now let's say loss and growth. So you have these two situations, these two very different situations and different circumstances, eliciting very different emotions. But imagine you are in a state where you have lost everything, and then now you have, like, you're looking at this situation, and depending on how your brain is primed and depending on the background of how you process such emotions, whatever you see out of that situation is very personal, and it is very different from what I will see or what somebody else will see. And that's the same thing. Like when you walk into a room, for example, if you walk in there believing that those people hate you and those people just are harsh, you will end up having a very terrible experience. But if you walk into the same room with the same people, but with a different mindset, maybe thinking that maybe they're just normal people, we just have normal conversations and it won't be a big deal, trust me, you will have a very bright day. You will have in the same room with the same circumstances. That's like you can hand one person, two people, the same situation, and they will both come out with very different results. Why? Because we all get to process information based on how our brain is primed to in the first place. So you cannot change by changing the information. You can only change by changing the like, what do we call it? The program. It's like the program. When you're running some data through a program. Now, you cannot change the outcome by changing the data. You can only change the outcome by changing the program, right? So thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. Please remember to subscribe, like, and share, and see you guys on the next episode. Bye.